I had the amazing honor of hanging out with Lauren McGoodwin, the author of our April book of the month, Power Moves. We got to talk about this book, some of the really cool information and advice in it, and I want to share with you the interview that I did with her. Check it out. Yeah. So yeah, I always tell people when I start my presentations, I'm like, oh, all my presentations are species inclusive. So
Yeah.
have any furry friends on screen, as many as is preferred. It's really the best thing that has come from virtual presentations is people's pets.
Yes, yes. Certainly it's been a huge perk to see, and like the little cameos that they make are pretty good too.
So good. So good. Thanks for meeting with me and talking about power moves.
Yes, I'm thrilled that you wanted to select the book and you liked it. And yeah, this will be fun.
Yeah, it came as, I mean, I've been a fan of Career Contessa for a while now. One of my friends put me on that years ago. I read the newsletters and it came up, it comes up in the newsletter every once in a while. And I had an executive coaching client who was kind of in a career transition point. And while I do professional development, and which obviously affects your career, I'm not specifically a career coach.
Hmm.
So I don't do like resume reviews or stuff like that. So I was like, I think what she needs is a little more specific career coaching, as opposed to just doing some professional development only. And so I was like, what's a good resource? I was like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what it is. It's called Power Moves. So I read it.
Amazing.
I was like, yes, I'm totally going to use this with my clients.
Oh, good. Well, that was the goal of the book. So I'm happy that it's like you feel confident you can give it to them as this actionable,
Yeah,
here's the manual on how to do it.
right. Yes. And I love that it's an easy read, it's conversational. You don't have to sometimes I think a lot of books in the self-help, professional development, personal development world, they get bogged down with too many stories. And I love a good story to illustrate the point you're trying to make, but I don't need like 75 stories throughout the entire book.
Yeah. I know what you mean. You're like, I can understand it. Just get to the point.
Right, right. So good. So I appreciate that. So tell me a little bit about how did Power Moves come about? What is the origin of writing this book, and the information from where it came from, why you wrote it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually had zero intentions on writing a book. I don't love like long form writing. I think a blog post is like the perfect amount, and a book is obviously a lot longer than that. So actually, I didn't have any intentions, but my book agent reached out to me. I want to say the first time in maybe like 2017 about a book. And I was like, absolutely not. It's not going to happen. And then I said, follow up with me a year later. And she did, like probably to the day. She's very organized. And I said, okay, I'll consider it. And she said, all you have to do is make a proposal. And if it doesn't sell, nobody buys it, then like you don't do anything with it. I was like, all right. So I kind of committed to making a proposal and was really fortunate. Had a publisher who was a great partner, Harper Business, who said, "We love your book. We want to buy it. We want to help you create it." And so I definitely would not be here as a published author without the nudge of the book agent and the publisher. And I will say to people who are unsure, it's like you make a proposal and you kind of lay out what you're going to do. And then once someone buys it, they basically give you a schedule, but you're kind of on your own on doing it. And so from there, it was, from the proposal, I will say, because it was so thorough, the outline, it was really, what do I want the book to be about? What do I want the message? What do I want the takeaway to be? And for me, I thought about, well, what was the thing that I would have appreciated the most in my career? And also, I'm really fortunate that Career Contessa has allowed me to speak to so many people. And I feel like one of the things I've gotten to be able to connect the dots with that I never would have had this not been my full-time dedicated job is sort of what's the difference between people who build these like fulfilling careers that really work for them, not against them, versus people who are on this like constant hamster wheel. They're the people who are always switching jobs. It's like something's always missing. And I'm like, there's a disconnect. And I really wanted to create kind of like this shortcut to the other. And so then there's the process of writing, which is hard. It's 60,000 plus words. It's a lot of feedback. It's a lot of imposter syndrome that comes in while you're writing about imposter syndrome. So all these things, but I would say to anybody, it's about like having a good team, both like for me at Career Contessa, but then also the team that was helping me kind of flush out your thoughts. Again, I'm not a natural writer. So I think one of the hardest parts for me was that I had things I wanted to say, but I didn't know how to say them, or, how do you write this out in a book? Because again, writing a book is really like its own other beast altogether.
Like its own style. It's not a blog. It's not an email.
Yeah. And like so much of what we do is like this short form communication. And so when you have the space of the time, it's almost like you can struggle with it. You're like, this is too much time and space. Like, I like the way the book came out and the format. And I think it was easy. And that was the most important thing. I wanted people to understand, because we were talking about kind of self-help books or career books. I think one of my biggest issues with them is I feel like sometimes they're very like pie in the sky. Like they have all these like great messages, but you're like, but I'm the person who shows up to the cubicle every day. Like, how do I implement this on the ground floor? And so there's the people who are like the 30,000 foot view. And then there are the rest of us who actually show up to work. And so I wanted this to be for the person who has to show up to work and have that conversation with the boss or the coworker. And can I give them the tools on how to say it? And so, that can sometimes be hard to do in a book as well. But yeah, long story short, I came up with it from also just like what people wanted, where were the questions, what were the biggest challenges in their careers, and trying to solve for that.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, it's something I feel like I take issue with a lot of folks in my profession who are professional speakers and coaches and leadership coaches. And there's a lot of 30,000 foot, all these great concepts and great overarching advice. And I understand that things have to be vague so that they can be applicable to a lot of people. Right. I get it, but you have to follow that up with very practical and specific tools. And maybe that one practical thing won't work for this person, but it will work for that person.
Yeah. And I'm also a very visual learner. And so for me, I need the practical example. To your point, maybe that I won't apply that exact same example, but it gives me an idea of like, oh, okay, so you use a journal. I'm not a journal person, but I could do this every day. Like I could make this exercise work for myself. And like I said, I knew from the research and what, all the interviews and all the people we had spoken to, like the difference between being proactive in your career and reactive were a lot of these tangible, practical things. It's not talking about it, it's the action. And that's a behavior change. And all of that stuff is really hard to do. Yes, to your point, I'm also, I like tactical. I'm a visual learner. I want an example, even if I won't use it exactly.
That makes sense. There's a lot of like tables and charts in the book. And even taking like, we're going to write it out, but then on the next page, there's going to be columns with the information in it. So that makes sense.
You can visually see how I was thinking about it. Exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. So what is one of the core pieces of information, if you could tell someone like, this is the one thing that I want to communicate about this book, or maybe this is the one thing that people tell me all the time, they bring up to me, what is that one nugget of information?
I think to piggyback off of what I just said, it's about the proactive versus reactive. I think a lot of people are trying to get out of the talking about it, the thinking about it, the analysis paralysis, like they feel stuck, they don't know what it is. So I think it gives people the vocabulary, the tools, the language, the mindset to help them go from more of this reactive character to being proactive. And again, it's about behavior changes. And so sometimes I think with behavior change, everyone that comes at a different level. Some people are great at doing that stuff on their own. Other people want to be guided. Other people want their hand held, and some people, want to be told exactly what to do. And I think depending on who you are in that journey and what you're looking for to get out of this sort of like stuck feeling with your career to feeling like I'm in the driver's seat, I at least have some control. I have way more control over this than I think I do. I think that's probably one of the best things about power moves is it teaches people like you do have more control, and here let's do it together. Let's put more control in your career. And I think that is I think one of the things that leads people to feeling burnt out and feeling fatigued and overdone with the job is this lack of control. And so it's like, how can we, because you have a boss, you have someone above that, sometimes you feel like there's these unwritten rules at work. And so I would say a big takeaway is about the proactive, infusion of these power moves into your life.
I love that.
Yes.
All right, so then tell me about the myth of the dream job. This is something, I love this concept because it's something I've always struggled with, and I didn't really understand why. I didn't like that phrase. I was like, why? Something bothers me about it, and I don't know why I don't like the dream. I get what you're trying to say. I get the dream, I get it.
It's a great marketing line on Instagram or in an email or on a sales page, right? Similar to, the dream partner or the dream whatever. It's the belief that this one thing is going to fulfill all these different aspects and variations of you. And that's not a reality. And I think one of the things I really struggle with is like, it's all about managing and setting expectations. And so if you expect that there's a dream job out there, and that, you just need to work harder to find it, and it's your fault why you don't have one already, then that turns into a whole other slew of stuff, right? Blaming yourself, kind of shame, feeling like, why is everyone getting this and I'm not? And the reality is like not having a dream job and like the myth of the dream job, part of what keeps you on this like consistent hamster wheel looking for more and searching for more and better, and the grass is always greener, which is kind of like a miserable way to live when you think about it, is the fact that you not only think it's out there, but you believe you're also entitled to it. And what I find about people with dream jobs is often they're not a dream job, they're a good enough job. They're a job that checks the boxes that are the most important in their lives, or they allow them to do something else that's equally important in their life that has nothing to do with their job. And so I, similar to you, have always taken issue with sort of this dream job lingo, not because it would be great from a marketing perspective, it's, shortens everything, but from the perspective of like, aren't we setting people up for sort of this like disastrous fall? Because I felt like I was sold this batch of dream job goods in college and like fell face first and then was like angry at the world and stuff like that. And I also think that one of and this has really come out in COVID, is like there was this belief that you should be working within your passion, that passion would solve all your problems with your job. And really what we found is that we were just being exploited, right? Like these companies in these industries were taking advantage of like being able to pay you less and ask for more so that you could say what I'm passionate about this job. And so this is another one of those things where I'm like, the myth of the dream job keeps you stuck. So it doesn't help you personally. And actually all it does help are the people who are taking advantage of the fact that you are buying into this. And it's just, I just had Reshma Sajani on my podcast, and she was talking about how, the lie of corporate feminism. And she's like, we all got it wrong. We thought, girl boss your way to your top, girl boss your way to the top and lean in. And she's like, I was wrong. Like, that's not how we do it, and I think the dream job would have been the third component in that little tripod.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Might be my favorite part. I don't know, I have a couple favorite parts, but it's definitely one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. And I think it's something, and the book is specifically written for millennial women, although most of it can apply to anyone.
Yes.
but it is written kind of in the voice, obviously in your voice from a millennial woman to speaking to your peers. And I think that's another bit that we were sold as millennials our
Yeah,
entire
for
lives
sure.
was you're special, you can live your dreams, you can do anything you put your mind to. We were
Yeah.
sold these lies, like
Mm-hmm.
there at some point you can put your mind to whatever you want, but if you don't have the ability, if you don't have the access, if you don't have the talent, if you don't have the training, if you don't, whatever the requirements of that thing are, baby, you can't do it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter
Yeah.
how much you put your mind to it. Like,
Yeah. I remember thinking like I got this all wrong. Like I thought the formula for success was sort of 1 + 2, was going to equal 3. And then you realize, well, 1 + 1 is not equaling what I thought, like basically there isn't this formula. And I think as millennials, we are the first generation to be this very like over-programmed, over-scheduled group where that actually could be applied. And so that is where and now we're all like that, right? So like maybe the millennial generation was the group that kind of got raised on it, but we've all adapted to that. So whether you're Gen X, a baby boomer, Gen Z even is in this too. So what happens when you go to the first unscheduled portion of your life, which is work? And like you've gone through this educational system, and there's been like these boxes you check, and then there's work. But what box do you check? How do you know you're doing well? How do you know you're on the right track? How do you get to, and but we've also kept all the comparison stuff, right? So you don't have this measure of success that you got like the satisfaction of with school or these, scheduled activities. But then we've kept all the, and actually we've added a few more, because now we've added Instagram and, social media and all this other stuff that you get to now keep comparing yourself. So it's like we kept the bad parts and we lost the good part that helped people feel like on this balancing act they were measuring out. And then on top of it, what's even worse is not everyone can be special. Not everyone can be the best. Not everyone gets to make the most, and that kind of stuff. So it's a real, it's not a shock that people end up in these like versions of stuck in their career.
I love this. And I've done when I work with college students a lot, and I was in higher education for almost a decade before I started my own business as a coach. And so I have spent years with college students. And my favorite thing to tell them was to shatter their world. When I would tell them, like, here's the deal when it comes to jobs, especially when I was talking to juniors and seniors who are getting into their major courses, they're getting internships, they're starting to apply for jobs, and I found this perfect job. I want to do this. Perfect, this ideal thing. And I was like, here's something you have to understand about jobs. There's going to be some load of crap that comes with any job. And it could be you have a crappy boss. It could be that you have to do all your own admin work. You don't have an admin at the front desk. You have to do it all, and paperwork sucks, right? Yeah. It could be that you get to do something really cool in your job, but the other half of your job is way less cool, right? There's going to be some crap in every job, and you have to decide what crap you're okay with dealing with and which crap you're not okay with dealing with. And I would watch these juniors and seniors, just like their brains just melt out of their ears. And I was like, yeah, there's no job where it's all the cool thing.
Yeah. Work. I mean, it's called work for a reason. I hate to say it. I don't want to burst everyone's bubble, but, and I think that's kind of, again, goes back to that expectation thing, is you put this pressure on yourself to find this perfect job or dream job, then you land it, and then you're like, wait a minute, like the expectation, isn't meeting the reality. And you have this, what Christine Hassler always, she has a book called Expectation Hangover, and that's what you experience. And it hurts. It's a hard, long expectation hangover. It doesn't last a day. It lasts sometimes years, months. And then people start to have this realization, like, Some people do, some people don't. Some people just grind it out and kind of are like, this is the way it is. But then there are other people who, again, and the whole point of the book was to try to make people understand, like, you don't have, you can be proactive, and there are people who are fulfilled in their careers. It doesn't mean they love every part of it. I don't want to repackage what was already sold to you. There are people who are fulfilled in their careers, and that doesn't mean that there aren't parts they dislike. But again, the focus is on that kind of like good enough piece. It's
Yep.
checking what are the most important boxes to you. You're not going to get to check them all. It's interesting because at the end of the day, I use a metaphor in the book about like, power moves is it's not a fad diet, it's a lifestyle. It's there are so, and again, when you think about behavior change, you just apply these same rules to your career, to your relationships, to your health and your diet or whatever. Like at the end of the day, extremes don't work. And so fad diets don't work when you're trying to lose weight. It doesn't, the fad diet of career stuff doesn't work either. It's power moves is about embracing this lifestyle, this career lifestyle. And I people always want it to be sexier and more glamorous advice, or something that's like more of a secret. And it's like, if that existed, you would know already. We would all know already. So
Right. Just like in dieting, and you lose weight, and people are like, what did you do? Eat less, move more. Like,
yeah. Yeah, but they're always looking for like, what is this special hidden secret? Like it's
exactly.
some superfood that they found in the Amazon or whatever, and it's like,
Exactly. Like,
you know,
no.
yeah. Yeah. It's not to say that you can't have the mix of glitter and glue. Like you can't
Right.
have a cool job that has some cool assignments that, yes, are fun to talk about and kind of brag about. It doesn't mean that you're never going to get that. It just means that the majority of it is going to be this glue substance, these like consistent behaviors, these showing up and doing your admin work or doing these things that help you have those other moments. And that's like not the most fun glamorous part of a job, but that's the reality. And that is actually, like, we're talking about sustainability, and I think that's something, especially during COVID, that's become a little bit more of a buzzword, or something people are talking about, is like, how do I sustain this? Because I can't go a million, I can do this for a little while, but then I have to stop. And again, power moves are just like, they just repeatedly fall into every like aha moment that we have. And it's like, yes, because at the end of the day, this is the stuff that works.
Yes. Oh, I love that. All right. So one of my favorite questions I like to ask, I just asked this to a nonprofit group of women at a presentation last week. But one of my favorite questions to ask, that actually, in my experience, came from pageants. I've been in pageantry for over 20 years now. And there's this question that they love to ask us in interviews or in onstage questions. And it comes up all the time. And there are different versions of it. But I love to put it out there because I really do think it's a good question. I think there's some weird pageant questions, but there are some good ones too. And this is one of
Yeah.
the good ones. And I love people who get to actually do work, professional work with women. I love to hear what their answer is. So the question is, what do you think is one of the biggest issues facing women right now, or issue facing professional women, or, just some version of that?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely not us. Like, we're not trying hard. I think it's the system. I think we've got to change policies and systems. The system works the way it was set up. It was set up for a man usually to go to work, and them to have a full-time caretaker at home taking care of their life. And that's not the reality. Actually, for most families, they need to be dual income families just to survive and pay for life. It's gotten significantly expensive. And the system and the policies and the processes and the societal views on this kind of stuff does not work for working women. We are, it's like, yeah, you can work, but you're still expected to do all these other things. And so, unless you can financially pay for the support, or you have the support, it's just like, it's impossible. Like, talk about like a sustainable situation. Like, it's not sustainable. So I would say that the biggest issue facing women today is like, if we don't change these structures and policies and systems, we are going to continue to be where we're at, which is burnt out, tired. We feel like no one's listening to us. And it's not just women, it's basically anyone who isn't a white man in the workplace. And on top of that, it's pretty much anyone who doesn't have like a full-time assistant in their life helping them. You know what I mean? Like, because most jobs today are not just like one dimensional, right? You're in charge of doing, like you point out, you'll have to do your admin work, you have to do this, you have to do that. So like already having a job is a lot of jobs. And then you have your life jobs and everything else. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest issue facing women today. And it's like one of my biggest fears is that we've shaken and disrupted so much right now. And I'm like, let's capitalize on this moment. Let's, ask certain questions in interviews and hold companies accountable to changing certain things. And let's demand childcare, as a benefit. Why isn't that a benefit? Why are we putting pool tables and paying for beer? Like why? And it's not just a benefit for women. And I really want the language to be about like, this is a benefit for humans and families. And, they always make it sound like, oh, these are benefits for moms. It's like, but the dad needs childcare for his kid too, so I'd really like to see that. And my biggest fear is that we're going to kind of just go back to normal, and like, this will be a blip on the radar of a time when things maybe would have changed. Like the workday doesn't need to be 9 to 5. That's, I mean, and then like school hours aren't that, and people are, I had someone the other day talk to me and she's like, you always say this stuff based on like people who are moms. What about us who are not moms? And it's like, think of it this way. If you're helping, it helps everybody. Like right. I would say most people don't thrive off of a 9 to 5 workday. Most people,
there's research that shows that.
Yeah. So while I'm harping on like the comparison of like, here's the school schedule and here's this, but like it's all working women. This is not a comment to just like people who are moms and working. The system isn't set up for you either. And right. It's really not set up for you if you have kids. So I guess I like to think of it as like we're top down. Moms maybe are the loudest group right now because they have so little time and so much responsibility. But it's all working women.
I agree. I love pointing out to people this like 9 to 5, this 40-hour work week. I'm like, y'all know where that came from, right? Mm-hmm. Like that was a marketing ploy from Henry Ford back in like the 19 teens or 20s when he had his automobile plants and there were no labor laws. And so people were working like 17 hours a day and children were working in factories, and people started coming down on Ford as a company and being like, yo, you have unsafe and really bad practices in your company. And it was straight up like a PR move to be like, oh no, we take care of our employees. They only work 40 hours a week. Look at those other people where they work 60 and 70 hours a week. No, our people only work 40 hours a week. That's literally where it came from.
Yeah. And they've done a lot
because it was good.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an arbitrary number that some like megalomaniac chose back 100 and some years ago. Nutso bananas.
Yeah. And then I say about the shakeup recently is we've had to come to terms with work hours, essential workers, non-essential work, like all this stuff that like it was there, but no one was talking about. Now it's like you can't look away. So yeah, that's I think what I think is the biggest issue, and also my biggest fear is I don't want this moment to kind of pass by without some stuff changing.
I agree. We're like set up perfectly to change the system and to have proven to these companies or bosses or industries that working from home can work and can work better. Being flexible can work. Changing the system can work because we just did it. Like we just did it for 2 years. So look, it's not, you don't have to worry about some professor's research telling you that. We lived it. So let's keep doing it. Let's make it better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think another bit that plays into in the book that we talk about burnout and how to do self-care, real self-care that's not lighting a candle and petting a fluffy dog, right? that's nice and that's pleasure. Pleasure is good and we like to feel
Mhm.
good or eat a yummy cookie, but like lighting a candle can't fill your soul, right?
Yeah.
And eating a cookie can't give you joy. It gives you momentary pleasure, but not soul changing joy, right?
Mhm.
So I love that we do talk about real self-care and fulfillment in a professional world. And I think one of the things I've been thinking about and talking about a lot very recently has been what I'm calling the commitment crisis.
Mhm.
I think over the last 2 years, because everything got shaken up, a lot of people were like, oh, I'm doing a lot of things that I didn't actually want to be doing.
Mhm.
Now I would like to not do those things anymore. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're seeing meetings for the sake of meetings and mediocre events. And people are like, I put pants on for this. No, thank you. I would rather stay at home.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so we love redefining our priorities. Yes, so good. We need to be better about communicating that because then it turns into
Yeah.
like flaking out, and that's not good. That's
Yeah.
not a power move. Not a power move. We do not want
Yes.
to just sign up and then not show up. It's not cute. We don't like it.
Mhm. No. No, not fans of that.
But we like priorities and boundaries. Yes.
Yes, we're big fans of that. And what I find too, the irony of this is like when you overcommit and then you have to cancel, you basically just do something twice, because you've said yes to it all, you've had to have the mental burden of it, and now you're gonna try and cancel it, and then you have this weird thing that comes afterwards where you feel bad about it, slash FOMO, whatever. I I, also the most precious resource you have is your time, and even your energy. And so I interviewed this wonderful time management expert, Laura Vanderkam, and she used to talk about how, like, if you fill your days and weeks with all these things that fall into the 1, 2, 3 type bucket, then you're so full so that when something that's like a value of like a 9 or a 10 in terms of importance and like value for you comes along, you have to cancel all those little things to make time for it, or you don't have time for it. And I think it's we productive or busyness has just become such a badge of honor that people
Right.
think that's the right way to go. But you know having boundaries, having priorities, being really focused about what are the trade-offs. There's Essentialism is a fantastic book I would encourage everyone to read, because he talks a lot about the benefits of like when you're making these trade-offs and how it leads into your bigger picture. And I just can't emphasize enough that like self-care isn't about lighting a candle. It's about having control of your time and your energy, and where you're going to put that matters. And we're talking about like sustainability is sort of a theme here. Like, it's not sustainable to say yes to everything. It's not sustainable to and no one day off or an hour here is going to replenish that. And so you know, also being able to focus and know where your areas of focus are really going to help you in all the other areas of your life too.
Yes. Yeah. A nap doesn't help when it's your soul that's tired.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love that. Defining your priorities and then like committing to them and being okay with being like, hey, thank you so much for this opportunity. But that's not really one of your priorities. So thank you for
Yeah.
thinking of me, but I can't attend.
Yeah. Most of the time too, saying no to something is a lot harder in your own mind than it is in reality.
No one cares.
I definitely I say no to a lot of things, like a lot of things. And in the beginning I always felt like, oh, I should do this, da, 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 or sometimes people will come back and they'll shame you a little bit, but just keep doing it. Like, just keep doing it. Go, make the small steps if you're uncomfortable with it, but just keep drawing those boundaries and being really clear about what are those priorities, and ask yourself and filter through it. Like, is saying yes to this and spending my time doing this, does that help me focus on this thing? And that will help kind of, I think, you like filter through when to say yay or nay on stuff too.
Yeah, you got to walk away from what's not serving you and where you're not being of service. Both.
Yeah.
I agree. Oh my gosh. Anything else? Any other nuggets of information you wanted to share about power moves? This has been great. I've loved every minute of this.
I mean, I hope the book, I mean, the goal with the book too, for people who haven't read it is like buy it, read it, and then come back to it. Like use this as sort of your training manual or your pep talk, you know, your personal career coach when you need it, because careers are going to ebb and flow. Life stages are going to ebb and flow. And I think that the earlier you can be proactive and take control and kind of decide that you're gonna forget the noise and block that out. Again, the glitter and the glue, like it's okay to have some of the glitter, but oftentimes we need to build the foundation really strong before we can do anything else. And so whatever you have to do to keep yourself away from those distractions, if that makes sense, do it. And I hope Power Moves really does give that tangible, practical, just example, even visual examples of how you can do that and what I mean by it. But like ultimately at the end of the day, you are building a career on your own terms and what works for you. And oftentimes what we do when we're unsure, feeling lost, we look toward other people about what are they doing and see if we can apply it to ourselves. And I would really urge you, try not to do that, because that is where we get lost even more, because you're kind of living someone else's either expectation or desire, or you know what they think, you know, that kind of stuff. And so I know it's really tempting because you're like, just someone give me a blueprint on how to do this, but like trust me, that's the fad diet thing. That's like taking the easy way out, where you're just going to come right back to this. Behavior change is hard. It's meant to be hard, you know. So
You have
you
to
know, if
put
it
in the
feels
work
hard, it's
for
okay.
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And really be very clear about, like, again, like the good enough job, like your version of good enough job is going to be different than my version. And guess what? In 5 years from now, both of our versions of that is going to be different, you know? And so the more you can kind of implement these power moves, the more you'll be able to flow with stuff without the anxiety, without the burnout, without the nervousness that maybe change or, you know, stuff like that feels right now, the emotional kind of, you know, wave that kind of comes over when that stuff is changing, things like that.
Oh, perfect. Oh, this was so much fun. This was amazing. Thank you
Yeah, this
so
was.
much. I had so
Yeah,
much
thank you for
fun.
having me.
Pixie had a great time.
Pixie, you are an A+ student.
I know.
You look very fulfilled.
Pretty much. I mean,
Yeah,
she lives a very excellent life over here. So make
yeah,
no
I have no doubt.
she is living her best life. Thank you so much, Lauren. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And we've had a couple people, because my business, this is my book of the month for April. And so we've put it out there and put some videos, and I'm doing a giveaway next week or the week after with a whole basket of goodies with the book.
Oh, nice.
And I've already had a couple people who contacted me who were like, oh, I read this. Like, thank you so much for this resource. This was awesome.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much for your support. It means a lot. And yeah, let me know how else we can support it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.